All right, so here we are. So my apologies for that. The power went out in my Airbnb. I'll write that in my Airbnb, and um, and now I'm on battery. Uh, so we'll see how long this lasts, but I do have a full charge with my computer. We should be good here. And look, I'm dedicated to the cause, so I'm here to answer your questions, and I'll do what I can. So let's see, what was being asked in the last one here? Uh, yeah, David said, can you answer that question again earlier? Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I have to. What was the question? You just remind me what the question was, because unfortunately, um, I don't have that screen anymore. Everything crashed on me when the power went out. So I'm gonna start with the question above, and then I'll get back to that. I promise you. So the question above says, "Hi, what would you say is the best part of being a poker dealer and the part you prefer the least?" Um, okay, that's a bit of a question. So I'm going to answer you. David brought the question back that I was in the middle of answering when the power went out. He said, "Can you move up in the ranks in casino?" So the first answer to that question is you can. Um, you don't, there's no actual degree that's required in order to work in casinos. It's one of the cool things about being a poker dealer, a table games dealer, and all those things. You don't need any degree. You don't even need a high school degree. You just need to be able to do the job. And a lot of the time, people who become supervisors and, poker floors, table games floors, pit bosses, it's all the same language. Here's the power back on again. People who end up doing that are the people who uh, have worked their way up. So it's actually a very common thing as opposed to something that you can do. This is typically how it works. Typically, in order to become a poker room director, you first work your way up by doing the other positions as well. And it's really cool the way that it's done. It's also an industry that sort of requires that, if I'm being honest. You know, it's really, really hard to run a room without having the experience of being an employee because there's so much procedure associated with the job. And if you try to run a room without having that experience, it's hard to get the respect of the people that work for you because, you're just like super, super disconnected. It's sort of like, uh, it's sort of like, and I really mean this without trying to draw too much on the metaphor. It's sort of like that look that a guy gets from a woman when he tells her what it's like having a baby, right? Like you wouldn't want to get that look from a woman and try to like give her advice on how to have a baby when a man is going to have no idea how to do that. It's sort of similar trying to run a poker room without having ever been a poker employee. It's like if you can't tell dealers how to do things if you've never been a poker dealer, for example. It's hard to manage dealers as a supervisor if you've never been a dealer. So it's almost necessary. There have been a few cases where there are the truly right type of people who have been in supervisor, director positions without having ever done it. And even of the ones that I know, like two of the three that I know have been table games dealers. So it's sort of got that crossover. Um, but yeah, that is pretty much how it works. One challenge there is, you're sort of asking the question, your follow-up is, does a room director have a much higher salary compared to a dealer? And Clement, I am going to get to your question. This is just already asked in my previous attempt at a live stream, so I'm sort of going here. But one of the challenges in getting poker dealers to move up is oftentimes the poker dealer is going to make more money per hour than the poker supervisor. Now, if you add a tip out to your room, that really helps, but that only sort of levels it out. It doesn't make it so that the supervisors make more. Sometimes supervisors make more, but poker dealers can hit six figures in a year if they work enough hours, right? Uh, Poker directors, I've seen people take that job for as little as 60 grand a year in some pretty bad extreme cases, and as much as I think that not including the incentives, which can bump it up even higher, I've seen it go as high as about 130, 140. Those are for the really, really, really big rooms. The incentives can make a big difference to the director in those cases as well, but um, there's no exact answer. It's sort of based on the market competition, the size of the room, the qualifications, and like I said, the incentives for the room can really make a big difference there as well. But there's not really any good degrees to get in order to move up either. You just sort of have to figure out how to learn. And a lot of the time in casinos, getting that title is really the thing that helps get you to the next stage. Hiring somebody to run a poker room or run a table games department or anything like that is really, really, really challenging, especially if you're just an owner and you don't know how to find somebody. So it is possible sometimes to sort of slide in that way, but then you have to do the job and you get measured based on the results of how the room does. So it's also easy to fail if you're the wrong person for that job. Um, let's see. Hopefully that answered you. Feel free to ask follow-ups there if I didn't cover exactly what you were looking for. I do really aim to satisfy people when I answer questions that are asked. Clement said, "Hi, what would you say is the best part of being a poker dealer and the part you prefer the least?" So the best part of being a poker dealer for me by far is twofold. It is the money that you get from dealing, and dealing poker is a totally doable job that you don't take home. There's nothing stressful about it once you leave there, right? So the money that you get from it is absolutely amazing. And the fact that if at any point you need that type of money in your life, you can get it. So it's the security. My favorite thing about having being a poker dealer in my back pocket is I can go and get that money anytime I need it. That is amazing. It really, really helps in life. It takes away my stress. It takes away my fear of not knowing where my income is going to come from. And I tell you what, like, I mean, I went to a 4-year college and got an engineering degree, and there was no reason for me to do that, honestly. I mean, I learned some stuff for sure, but having without too stressful of a situation, having 60K a year in my back pocket, if I want to work like 4 days a week, is just amazing. So that's the best part about it. The worst part about being a poker dealer is different for everybody. Um, I would say it's probably the lack of control. You don't choose what table you go deal at. You don't choose what players you're dealing to. Um, you don't really have a lot of say in when you work. You can tell them when you'd prefer to work, but sometimes in order to get the shifts you want, you have to work your way toward that over time. You don't get holidays off. Like you just have a pretty strong lack of control in a lot of different facets of your life as a poker dealer. If you can find the right situation for yourself and you have the right relationship with the management, then you do get more control. But I mean, look, even me as True Poker Dealer on YouTube, I'm dealing in Texas Card House. A lot of the players don't know who I am, which is fine. I obviously have no issue with that, but they treat me the way that they would treat any dealer, and that's not always with the highest level of respect. There are plenty of people that think being a poker dealer is awesome. There's also some poker players that just sort of look at you as um, somebody that's doing something that has to be perfect at it all the time, and that can be sort of challenging. The more experience you have, the easier it is to deal with that stuff. I'm sort of thinking of it from a new dealer's perspective, for example. There's a lot to learn, and generally speaking, you're going to get thrown into dealing without being perfect at everything. Recently, I did an interview with someone named Nas on my channel, and she had been hired as a poker dealer at that point. She'd passed her audition at the Hard Rock in Hollywood in Florida, but she hadn't actually started working yet when I interviewed her, and she was like nervous about trying to get everything perfect. And that was a pretty cool interview, and you get a sense for where she was at there. Well, I've spoken to her since then, and she still feels like, oh, there's so much to get better at, but I have to get better at it. But, the poker players are going to look at you as an imperfect dealer up until you're perfect. And even then, they just sort of get used to it with every dealer. So there's some of that stuff too. If you're not built to receive criticism, even when you're right, that's going to be hard. Um, let's see. Next one. Uh, My name is Robert. I sent you an email a couple days ago concerning lessons in Dallas. Hey, Robert, I'm glad you reached out. So I responded to your email, but the way that it was set up, it went to an Outlook private blah 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 email, and the email address that you had in the reply to was undeliverable. So I sent you a whole response, and it did not let me respond to you. So if you can send me another email that includes the email address to respond to you, or you can remove that private response thing, then I will absolutely get back to you. But yes, you can. We can set something up if you want. But I think it'd be better for me to be able to send you. But I swear, like it had this whole private Outlook thing, and I couldn't crack what email to send it back to. When I hit reply, it was undeliverable. Um, I'm glad that you jumped on here. I appreciate that because I was like, I don't really know how to reach you. I was thinking maybe just if you happen to come into the room, then I'd look for your name. I've never had that happen, by the way, where someone sent me an email and the reply address was undeliverable. David said, great answer. Okay, good. So you feel satisfied. I appreciate that. Patrick says, what size cards does DCH Dallas use? The two size options in poker are either poker sized or bridge sized. They're both totally fine for poker. I don't actually know why um, they have that distinction in name. They're both used in different places. For example, I used to work in a Seminole property, Coconut Creek in Florida. They use poker size. TCH Dallas uses bridge size. They're the smaller, slightly smaller version of it. Let's see. Clement says, "All right, thanks for sharing your experience." Well, you're welcome. Patrick says, in general, what size cards do most poker rooms use? So I answered that one too. It's literally both. Poker size, totally fine. Bridge size, totally fine. Um, I don't really like I started playing poker at Foxwoods in Connecticut, and like most people, the first thing that I learned was the thing that I thought, this is what it should be. This is what it has to be. And as I matured in the industry, I realized that that's not a real thing. And I sort of fell in love with both sizes in different ways between different properties I worked at. The poker size cards, the only thing I'll say about poker size cards is they usually, you have to squeeze them a bit more because of the way they print on them in order to actually see what your cards are as players. But as a dealer, they're sort of nice to have bigger cards because you can get just a smoother pitch out of it sometimes. Um, but the bridge size is cool too. Like it takes up less space on the table, which is sort of nice. But it's all pretty much the same. Like if I were to get my own room or open my own room, the size that I would go with, which would be whichever one I could get that was the hardest for players to put any fingerprints or anything like or fingernails or anything like that into the cards. I just want the cards that are the most durable as possible. Unfortunately, I don't know how to order those cards outside of working at a casino where they have a license because a lot of these vendors that have these perfect products only sell to licensed casinos. So I don't know how to get these cards for non-licensed individuals. That's why I always recommend Copags. Gemicos are sometimes the ones that have them, but they're really hard to get outside of casinos. Let's see. Next comment says, good day to you, sir. Hope things have been going well and better. I swear, like less than half an hour ago, I suddenly recalled your live videos and wondered when your next live would be, and here we are. Well, I'm happy to see you for sure. Yeah, I try to do every single Tuesday. I did not do last week because I had traveled back to Florida for a little bit and it just wasn't convenient that day. But I do try my best. Next question. Are dealers paid hourly plus tips or just tips? It is hourly plus tips. The only exception I think I've ever heard of where there's no hourly is on cruise ships. They sometimes do that, not even all the time. Um, but yeah, that's just an occasional thing. Let's see. Patrick says, "Hello, yeah, I hate that fingernail creases almost feel like mark cards." Right. And so as a poker dealer, you do need to make sure that the cards do not have any distinguishable markings. But then at the same time, you don't want to remove an entire deck if they all seem to have like similar markings on them. Um, it can be a pain. Also, shuffle machines sometimes they're better about this nowadays, but over the years, shuffle machines have sometimes the way they spool the cards through, they sometimes end up with those markings on them from the machines themselves. The cards that they use at Coconut Creek in the Seminole property were always phenomenal, actually. I was always really, really impressed with those cards. Um, I don't remember exactly what they were, but it's one of those things where you can only order them if you're a if you're a licensed casino that has the relationship with, I believe it's um, Gaming Partners International that provides those. I would love to buy those myself. I really would, because those cards are just awesome with the True Poker Dealer logo. I would love to sell those. I would do all that stuff, but I don't have that relationship with GPI. All right, so the power's back on here, and I'm going to try to transition myself right now to get back into where I was before. So, because I got my light on, I got my green screen here, and let me give this a shot to see if I can do it. Because I like this setup I have over here. I really do. I'm in an Airbnb right now. I literally went outside, and there's other people here that are apparently working from home as well, and they're saying that they're at Airbnbs too, and the power went out and all this funny stuff. But so now I'm gonna try to update this whole thing here, see if I can get this back, and let's see what we got here. All right, so I'm over there, and you can sort of see my green screen set up a bit, and now right over here. Um, let's see. Question says, what do you do about health insurance? Me personally, I have health insurance through healthcare.gov. I don't get it through the room. I mean, depending on where you work, some places will give you some version of health insurance, but it's not super common. Um, Let me see. That looks a little bit better. Um, where are we at? Okay, so now I got that, and I gotta add this image back. And why is the image like that? Oh, that's why, because it's starting it over. All right, that looks good. Um, and audio input. One more thing. I just want to turn this Blue Yeti back on. Spend all this money on the nice thing. I might as well use it, right? Okay, so now we're back, and we've got the right audio, and everything looks decent. So thank you for your patience with that. The power did go out here. I apologize for that. But it's back on. And yeah, Captain Underpairs. That's a pretty funny name. My kids used to watch Captain Underpants all the time. Yeah, definitely reach out to me. Let's see. Link says, "Hey bro, it's Eddie from TCH. Not sure if you remember me. I'm the Counter Strike player. I do remember you now that you've said that. Yeah, we met at TCH that first day you were back. Been checking out your videos. We'll be back at TCH soon. Miss you, man. You're a breath of fresh air at that place with a lot of energy and really cool watching you do the thing where you buy in 100 and leave with 1,000 over and over again. That was funny. Let's see. For anyone that's looking to play at Texas Card House, if you're a 2-5 player in other places, you could play 1-2 at Texas Card House and have a great time. I promise you that. The 1-2 games at Texas Card House are great. I usually play 2-5 where there's like a $500 to $1,000 max buy-in in other places, and at Texas Card House, I would play 1-2 all day because the pots get pretty big. Dealing it is also really enjoyable as well because typical 1-2 no limit games in poker rooms across the country have a lot of $10 pots or $20 pots, but Texas Card House 1-2 games are very frequently $100, $200, $300 pots. It's really, really good action there. I've always been impressed by that. Let's see. Patrick says, looks like they got you working as a greeter. Haha. I think you're right. Maybe this picture is from there. I'm not gonna lie. I just sort of took this picture from somewhere. The GM told me I could use it, and I just sort of popped it in and created my own little version of it. But this is, I think you're right. I think this is what it looks like when you first walk into their room, and this is what's in the back.
So yes, you may come in, and I need to gift you a membership if you don't have one, and then how much time would you like? I think is what they say to the players at Texas Card House, something like that. I haven't actually worked that area myself, although I really do enjoy learning processes and all that stuff from everything and everyone. Um, Link says 1-2 plays like 2-5. Yeah, exactly. Yes, Eddie, you're totally right. And man, it's been really interesting. If you think about it from a poker playing standpoint, there's something really enjoyable about getting to play 2-5 no limit, the equivalent of 2-5 no limit, but only having to put in $1 and $2 blinds every orbit, right? Like you're saving a ton of money in dead money playing at a game that plays like 2-5 with 1-2 blinds. Instead of 7 times every orbit, it's 3 times. It's $7 every orbit. It's $3 every orbit. It's really good coming to play 1-2 no limit at Texas Card House. Absolutely. And then they added a bad beat, which is really hard to hit. Although I am absolutely positive I'm going to deal it one day, and I don't. I mean, I can't say that in a serious way, but I just have this feeling for what it's worth. Uh, and then the GM's going to kill me the day that I do it, but not really kill me. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of paperwork every time a bad beat hits at any property, in my experience. But Texas Card House completely funds it out of their pocket, which is the coolest thing ever. So I'm impressed by that personally. Normally, it's taken out of every pot through like a jackpot drop or something. And Texas Card House just said, you know what? We're going to create a bad beat that's really hard to hit, but it's going to come totally out of our pockets. And I super respect that. It's a really cool thing they're doing. Um, so let's see. All right. I feel comfortable again. I'm back live streaming where I thought I was going to be. This is better. So what do I want to talk about during my downtime here? One thing that comes to mind is, let's see. I took about 8 days, 10 days off from dealing, and then I came back to Texas Card House, and um, I noticed that when I got back, they had some more staff, which was nice. Some of the staff had been working really, really long shifts, and I give a huge shout out to dealers that can do 6 to 8 table pushes and then break and then do it again for like 10 to 12 hours a day. There are some dealers that are absolute grinders in that room, and I give them huge shout outs. Um, and it's really nice coming back to the room and having it be 3 and 4 table strings. So that was really cool. For anyone that doesn't know how it works as a poker dealer, you deal a table for 30 minutes, then you get tapped out. You go to the next table that the supervisors have set up a string of tables. That's why it's called a string. You go to the next table, then you deal for 30 minutes. You go to the next table, deal for 30 minutes. You go to the next table, and eventually there'll be a break, and then you go to a table after that. The break is also 30 minutes, or it's however much time there is after the dealers have pushed through before. You usually get about 25 minutes out of your 30 minutes or so. 4 tables in a row is fantastic. 3 tables in a row is fine. 6 tables is a lot. 2 or 1 tables, 2 tables is okay. 1 table is a little bit not enough, but it takes a lot of concentration being a dealer table after table after table, and you can get burned out. So it's definitely like I love that it's back to about 3 to 4 table strings. I think that they do a great job there with that. Eddie says, I appreciate the kind words, brother. Haven't been there in a month. Been really busy with trying to get my life situation in order. Can't wait to be back. Awesome. Y'all gonna be making more play-by-play commentating on that new series. I think you're talking about the live streams that they do in the room for Texas Card House. That stuff keeps going over and over again. Or are you talking about live poker coaching, the other channel that I do? Live poker coaching is it. I've got videos that are like ready to be edited and then released. So I'm very excited about that. I'm not sure which one you mean, but the answer is yes for both. Whichever one you're talking about is a big yes. Oh yeah, 1 to 500 hands. So yeah, live poker coaching, which I'll put here, is a separate YouTube channel that I do. Um, have you watched any of it? I'm curious what your experience has been if you've watched it. We upgraded the format and everything. I'll probably have another 10 to 12 hands of that done within the next, I want to say 3 weeks. I should have another 10 to 12 of those up within 3 weeks. And then I talked to the poker pro that I do that with, Mike Lockey, and at some point, I think he and I are going to be the announcers on a Texas Card House live stream for like their 510 game or something. Mike would be fantastic for doing that, and I would love to be a part of that. But I cannot be the poker playing authority. I need to work with a pro such as him. But I think him and I doing that type of a commentary on Texas Card House's live streams would be great for everybody. And people would get used to us for this. Oh, you watched all of it. I like the new format. Some of the analysis wasn't broken down enough to be digested easily in some situations. I got you. Yeah, it's pretty high level poker conversation, but um, I totally get what you're saying. The more of it that we put out, the more of that stuff will make sense as well. He is a poker coach and he does a phenomenal job with all that stuff. But good. That's really cool to hear. I'm actually impressed that you watched all of it. I didn't know that's what you'd be doing. Let me see here. Oh, I'm still on my own Wi-Fi. I hope that lasts. It should be good enough. So, let's see. Let's see. I do know that there's a tournament series coming up at Texas Card House soon in Dallas where they're doing like I want to say a 250K guarantee, $600 buy-in, maybe May 13th or something, through the 17th or so, and that's going to be a great tournament series. I mean, the last time that Texas Card House ran a big tournament series like that, it said 500,000 guarantee, and they ended up getting almost 1.3 million in the prize pool. So this one should be really good too. I would anticipate this will break 500,000 at least. Gyro says, yo, I'm 16 and have my eyes set on becoming a dealer. Have you got any advice for me you wish you had while you were starting out? Good question. Appreciate that. So first, you can be a poker dealer. I'm assuming you're in the United States when you ask that question, but also the yo makes me think you're in the United States as well. Um, Assuming that you're in the United States, I believe that you know that you're able to do that starting at 18 years old in most places. Um, I guess the only real advice that I have for you is if this is going to be the first job that you ever have, it is very, very easy to jump into this job and have these really ridiculous expectations. Typically, what happens to somebody in life when they get a job doing something, if there's money and they're given stuff, they tend not to appreciate those things and they tend to be very complainy. The poker dealer culture is very complainy in general because poker player culture is very complainy and they have to sit and listen to that constantly. And whether or not you like it as a poker dealer, your mind can be very susceptible to being trained to be like the people you spend a lot of time around, which is the poker players. Remember, like 85 to 90% of the people at the tables that you're dealing to are not making money in the long run. Okay, remember that. So, that being said, I would honestly recommend, especially because you're only 16, I would honestly recommend getting a couple of other jobs first if you haven't already. Doing something that's a little bit less amazing than being a poker dealer so that you have something to compare it to so that you can truly appreciate the job. The more appreciation you can bring to being a poker dealer, the better. It's going to get you more tips and everything like that too, but it's also going to make your experience as a poker dealer better so that when your staff does things for you, your supervisors do things for you, you don't just expect them to do that all the time. You truly appreciate it. Uh, you know, having the conversations. Whenever somebody is a poker dealer for their very first job, almost all the time they're spoiled, and that's the thing I'm trying to say to avoid because you're going to end up hurting your relationships with your superiors, and hurting your relationships with other dealers if you don't give yourself some perspective. I would find something else that's a regular, less desirable job and work it with this thing in mind that I'm talking about, where you go and you appreciate the stuff that they're doing for you, and the whole poker dealer experience is appreciated instead. A great example of something to do would be to work retail first. Another great example of something to do would be to work in like a hotel first. That being said, it might not be what you choose to do with your time, but I promise you, it is the easiest thing in the world to have being a poker dealer be your first job and then just be wildly unappreciative of all the amazing things that you get there. Um, Another thing that I would recommend to you to consider is learn to spend less than you make. So right now you're not making $25 to $40 an hour as a poker dealer. You're 16. You haven't actually crossed that boundary or that barrier in life, most likely. Uh, I've said this in a previous live stream. There's a philosopher slash angel investor slash entrepreneur named Naval Ravikant who um, he's someone that I'm really fortunate that people pointed me toward his stuff. One of the things that he says is the best way to not be in this endless cycle of needing more money and needing more money and wanting more money and wanting more money in your life is to not upgrade your lifestyle when you get more money. I super recommend that because you can burn out as a poker dealer. And the worst thing, I've seen so many people go through this. They don't know any better. They upgrade their lifestyle once they start dealing poker, and then you can't take vacations because you don't have a very high base pay as a poker dealer. Your base pay is like somewhere between and maybe in some states like $13 an hour if you work in Washington where it's legally required. But most places it's a lot less than that. It's closer to like $5 an hour base pay. And so if you take if you're lucky enough to even get paid time off, you're not getting much money for it anyway. So, if you create a lifestyle for yourself that requires you to make poker dealer money every single week, 5 days a week, 4 days a week, you're setting yourself up to never be able to take vacations, and you're setting yourself up 3-4 years later. If you are truly burned out and you need a break, you need a change of pace, you want to keep poker dealing in your back pocket, you can't leave. That's one of the traps of being a poker dealer. So absolutely, absolutely important for you to train yourself now when you're young to live a lifestyle and keep a lifestyle that does not require the money that you're going to be making as a poker dealer. I cannot stress that enough. Um, I guess the last thing I would say is probably in relation to you. Oh, you're saying here, yeah, you're in the U.S. and you've had other jobs, janitorial work, volunteering at library, etc. That's excellent. Okay, so you can have that appreciation. That's really good. The last thing that I'll say for you is, in order to become a poker dealer, it is challenging. So, uh, I'm really not supposed to advise someone who's 16 to like learn this stuff, but at the same time, I totally understand. You're trying to develop these skills. You're not old enough to be in a casino, in other words, is what I'm saying. So, I would say. I don't think that there's any reason why you can't learn to be a dealer now. I would just soak as much in as you can. Get your skills ready to go for when you turn 18 and then go get that job is what I would say to do. Yeah, I mean, this is having this in your back pocket is life changing. It really is. You never feel like you don't know what to do. You never feel like you have to do a truly awful job. So yeah, just learn as much as you can and understand that the audition is hard. Passing a poker dealing audition is hard. It's not something that everybody does the first time. I talked to somebody who watches these live streams, and he he told me that he auditioned 5 times over the course of 8 months before he finally passed one. And one of the auditioners actually told him, this might not be for you. And it's really, really hard to hear that, especially for him to tell me that. It was hard for me to hear that, but imagine being him, right? That's a story I've heard before, though. It's not easy to pass your audition. Take it seriously, put the work in, and think about being better than everybody else that you're competing against for that job. So hopefully that was the type of thing that you're looking for. Let's see. SI says, what's some differences, similarities between Texas Card House Poker Room and poker rooms run by a casino? That's a good question. And then you say below, I've played all over Vegas, Canada, Foxwoods, Mohegan, and Atlantic City, but never to a standalone poker room. Was just curious. So you're saying same rate and promotions, etc. And you like being a dealer in a poker room alone working versus one in a casino. So let me see. the the reality is that this this specific circumstance in Texas, it creates a dynamic where you're not allowed to take a rake. And so one of the biggest differences for the players is that you got to come in and you actually paying out of pocket in order to play there. So you're paying like 13 bucks an hour is what it is at Texas Card House. And in Texas, that's how it works. You have to get a membership in order to follow these regulations. So you're paying either $10 for a membership for the day or like 30 bucks for the month, or there is an annual one I think as well. I don't remember exactly what that is. And the uh, the people that sign you up when you first walk in, they also will ask you how many hours you want to purchase up front. And if you run out of hours, which they call time, then you have to purchase more. So as a dealer, um, one of the biggest differences for me on a regular basis is when people run out of time, which I can tell through the Poker Atlas software on the table. When they run out of time, I have to notify using one of the system buttons. I have to notify someone that works at Texas Card House that players at my table need more time, and then a staff member comes around and collects time from them. But it is nice as a dealer not taking rake. It's sort of a break because, for 1-2 no limit as a poker dealer in regular casinos, which I've worked in, you do feel like you're sort of a professional change making person. Like you're just constantly making change in order to take a rake out of every single pot. But in terms of the rest of it, it doesn't feel that different. But if so, one of the reasons I came to Texas Card House Dallas is because the GM is somebody that I have worked with in casinos. This is somebody who, like, I've known them for years, and I'm very, very friendly with them and close with them, and I know that their abilities are up to par for regular casino poker. So Texas Card House feels very, very similar. I can't say the same for all the other Texas Card House properties. I have no idea what they're like. I've never been to one of them. Maybe they are the same, maybe they're not. This particular Texas Card House property in Dallas does feel just like casino poker to me. The only difference is the way that people pay in order to be there. Not taking a rake is sort of a bummer, honestly, because when you take a rake, I know that there are some players that play hours and hours and hours every month in the room, and what's 100 hours a month times $13 an hour? It's a lot of money that they are just like paying out of pocket. It's a weird vibe, is my point. But when there's no other option, people do it. And for what it's worth, $13 an hour. I don't know if you guys have done this math, but it's cheaper than you would get paying rake. So a lot of the players actually like doing that. It's just different. But there are other things too. There are some other things too. There's an ability to do things much more easily and quickly. So the live streams that you see for Texas Card House on YouTube, which are really cool, watching people play poker like that, it's much easier to set that stuff up in Texas Card House than it would be in a regular casino. In a casino, there's a lot more hoops to jump through with more advanced gaming regulations, and it's just there's a lot to do in order to sort of figure that out and get that all up to par. It's really nice being able to make decisions on the fly at a smaller card room, as long as it's one of those rare situations like at Texas Card House Dallas where the staff really gets it. I mean, there's somebody who they literally have run World Series of Poker tournaments, that runs a lot of the tournaments at Texas Card House, right? So that's sort of just the way that it works out, honestly. But my experience is you sort of get this blend of need to follow every single thing you're used to in casinos and don't. And it's sort of okay, but that's been my experience. I have not once stepped foot into any other card room that is in Texas, though, so I cannot speak to the majority of it. You do also, though, have in Texas, there's a lot of players that don't get it. They're super nice in Dallas, at least, but a lot of the players that come in, they're used to home games. And I was dealing a pot limit game, and I had a player just go off on first me, and then when they realized they were in the table, and then the world about how from the big blind in a pot limit game, they don't get to raise as much as the player on the button, for example. Now, this is a very small detail if you happen to get it, but like all of the home games, they said, allow for the player to raise the same amount. He has no idea what pot limit means. I mean, this is he thinks that calculating the pot is 3 times the previous bet plus the trail, and he doesn't understand what it actually means. And I'm like dealing the game, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do the whole "I'm true poker dealer, I can teach you" thing while he's playing. But you get a lot of stuff that people learn from home games. So the players in this market are sort of less sophisticated, but because they're nice, they go along with whatever. You know, there's a lot of players in tournament that they think it matters if they get their blind out in time for when the level goes up. They don't realize it's whenever the dealer riffles the deck, and it's like, why? Because people learn stuff from home games, or they learn stuff from other poker rooms that are less professionally run. They don't have any way to know that that's not really what's done, and so there is a lot of that too. But hopefully that helps shed some light on what you're curious about. Um, I mean, other than that, the fact that it's in a strip mall is sort of different. Usually, a poker room is going to be a standalone building. Somebody down here talked about um, the food. Food is better at the casino. Yeah, I mean, there's truth to that. I think that if Texas Card House was experienced enough, they would have no problem renting a space that had proper food options. I think that was just them trying to get it done. I don't actually know the answer to that though. They also happen to rent a space in a plaza that doesn't have food in the plaza, although there is a deli that's opening up any day now. But that's sort of a weird thing. I've also spent a lot of time in Washington State. I broke into the industry in Washington State, and there's a poker room that has 4 poker tables and some table games called the Slow Pitch Pub and Casino. And I've played a lot of 4-8 limit there. I played a little bit of table games there. I never worked there, but they have a bar, they have food, and I mean, they get it done. It's just it's a different thing. It is, but you still need to have surveillance and all this other stuff. I don't know. It's really cool. I like working for a room that's just a poker room. It's sort of a nice break. You don't have to be insane about every single thing like in a casino. I like that. There's also figuring stuff out as you go sometimes, but I haven't experienced too much of that. But I imagine, I didn't get to Texas Card House for a few months, and they'd also been running properties since 2015 in Austin, I think, is when that started. So I don't know. Let's see. Ruben says, "Hi Mark, how are you? Haven't connected in a while. I'm doing great. I appreciate that. How are you doing? I'd like to know." I'm having a blast out in Texas. I really am. Dallas is a cool place. I hate cold weather, and even though there was that once every 30-year cold spell that I came here right after it, like I went outside in a shorts and a t-shirt today, and I was happy. Like I love it out here. It's really cool. I still haven't experienced the insane summers that I hear about where it feels like an oven, but I mean I've been to Vegas in the middle of the summer and I sort of liked it for the World Series. But yeah, I'm doing great. I like it out here. Let's see. Uh, Gyro says I try to practice every day, but all of my friends don't enjoy any casino games. So on my video on my channel, I have a video that talks about how to take advantage of True Poker Dealer. In that video, if you go to the description, I put links to different things that you could buy in order to be able to practice at home. I tried to find links that were as cheap as possible, and like a 15 or less dollar felt on Amazon, like $10 padding to go underneath it, stuff like that. I do recommend at least grabbing some of that stuff and practicing, and I mean, make it happen for yourself. No excuses, right? If you want it, make it happen. That's life, right? Let's see. Judah says, "Can you run through why calculating the pot in a pot limit game is generally the previous bet times 3 plus the trail?" On my channel, I do on the bonus mixed game course. If you join my channel in the bonus mixed game course, I give a full explanation of all of that. Really quickly, I can give you an answer. Okay, so imagine this is a thought exercise. Greg says, "Hey Mark, let's play a hand." I actually don't have a table in this Airbnb, so unfortunately, I can't do that. I will at some point soon do a live stream in the room at Texas Card House, and then I'll be able to play a hand. But I can't do that today. I feel sort of bummed that I'm saying no, but it's because I don't have the equipment with me right here. But okay, in order to figure out where the calculation of the pot actually comes from, I want you to imagine this. Okay, so imagine that there's a small blind of 5 and a big blind of 10. We're gonna make this as simple as possible. 5, 10, pot limit Omaha in order to picture where this comes from. Okay, first player into the pot calls 10. Next player calls 10. Okay, now um, we're going to assume that the $5 small blind in this case, we're counting it as 10 for our calculation. Why? Because that's what's done in the industry. All right, so we've got two callers for 10. There's a $5 small blind. We're counting that as 10. There's a $10 big blind. Then there's two callers for 10. And it's the next player's turn, and they want to raise to the pot. Okay? Well, how do you do that? Or raise not to the pot. It's actually poor language. Raise the amount of the pot. So the first thing that you do in order to figure out what this calculation is, you say, how much would the pot be if this player were to call without raising at all? So you, in your head, put $10 in from that player. So you had a $5 small blind, which we're counting as 10, so that's $10. A $10 big blind, so that's $20. There's a $10 call and another $10 call. We said there were two callers for 10. Okay, so that's $40 plus the $10 call by the player whose turn it is. All right, so that's $50 is the amount that's in the pot right now. And you're allowed to raise by that much. So you're allowed to raise by that thing we just figured out, which is 50. So in order for you to raise by the amount of the pot, you would be putting in 60. It's the $10 that's there for your call, if you were to call, which would create the amount of the pot, plus the amount, plus you add the amount that's already in the pot for everybody. So because that's where that calculation comes from, it's going to come to $60 total. 10 for the call for you, plus 50 more, which is in the pot, which is 60 total. Now, backtracking to figure out the calculation, it's 3 times the previous bet, which is $10 was the previous bet, because the previous bet includes the call, right? So it's whatever's in front of you. 10 times the previous bet, which would be 30, plus the call before it. So plus the trail, plus the call before it, which was 10, so that's 40, plus the 10 for the big blind, which is 50, and plus we call the small blind to 510, which would bring it up to 60. So you can see that this formula is basically just created in order to properly calculate the pot. Somebody at one point in poker realized, here's a shortcut, it works almost all the time, there is a couple exceptions, and I do provide all that info for how to deal with that in my bonus mixed games course, which you can join my channel on YouTube and then find. And I believe it's lesson 4 in there for pot limit Omaha and calculating the pot. It's mostly just, even though it's pot limit Omaha lesson, I teach about Omaha in other videos. That's mostly just teaching not how to play the game or deal it procedurally, but how to calculate the pot in all circumstances, which is, there's a lot of info there. It's about a 2.5 hour lesson. So hopefully that was helpful. Let's see. Nick says, "Hey Mark, what is your favorite suit?" I appreciate that question. Let me see. I like Marc Jacobs just because it's my name. I'm kidding, of course. And you're asking about card suits, not dress suits. I. You know what's funny is I don't really like clubs, but I like all the other 3. I like hearts because of heart. I like diamonds because of diamonds, and I like spades because they're awesome. Clubs I don't really care about. So I have three favorite suits and one that I just don't care about. Why don't I like clubs? I have absolutely no idea. It doesn't matter. But that is how I feel. Pretty funny question. How about you, Nick? What's your favorite suit? Um, SI says, seems like TCH is the dominant option for poker in Texas then. Would love to check them out sometime. Any match the stack? Yes, thanks. Yeah, so Texas Card House in Dallas is like the best in town. There's also a lot of rooms that have tried to open out here that have not been able to open. And like I said before, I haven't actually been to any of the other locations. I've never even been to Austin in my life, so I have yet to step foot in Austin. But let's see. There, the one in Dallas is a great job. And any match the stack. So yes, in a lot in the 2-5 and higher, and in the 1-2-5 games like Pot Limit Omaha, etc. It's match the stack. It starts out every game when it opens for an hour is 1,000 max for the 2-5 and the 1-2-5, and then after that hour it becomes match the stack. The 5-10 and higher is always unlimited, uncapped from what they've opened so far. Um, let's see, and I gotta tell you, like sometimes these games I've seen 7, 8, 9,000 deep in some of these 2-5 games. 2-5 no limit Texas Hold'em. They get pretty deep. Patrick says, "What's your favorite food?" That's a funny question, and I am here to answer absolutely anything, so I'll answer that too. Um, I mean, I tend to like eating plant based nowadays, but that doesn't mean I don't eat everything. There's a restaurant in South Florida, for instance, called Chima. That's a Brazilian steakhouse that I really love it there. My my actual favorite food, I'm a sauce guy. I like amazing sauces. Um, there's a cashew sauce that Jazz taught me how to make. You guys might know her from my channel. That's like freaking amazing. I love ice cream, but nowadays I mostly eat non-dairy ice cream. Um, I like sushi a lot. I don't let myself eat it very often. Brown rice dishes, I love. Peanut sauce, I love peanut sauce. Stuff like that. Gyro says, I've seen that video. I own everything I need to practice, but it just isn't the same doing it to myself, you know? Plus, I've watched all your free videos. Can't afford to join the program though. I get it. You'll be able to join at some point. And look, if you're dedicated and you're passionate about all of it, you'll make it happen one way or another. Um, I mean, for what it's worth, for $4.99 a month, you can join my channel and get access to all my past live streams. And I do teach a lot of stuff. I don't have it organized. It's not like communicated which videos which, but you could start combing through some of that stuff to find any demos that I might have done over the last couple of years. That might make it easier for you if you don't want to spend the money, but you're down to spend the time. Like $4.99 a month, anybody can afford that. But then I guess you're not. I don't know. I don't know how it works with actually purchasing an age. So if it's not something that you're allowed to do, don't do it. Let's put it that way. Um, Black Sun says, I think I'll be moving out to Texas to deal. Sounds great. um, Come try to pass an audition at Texas Card House. If you're a dealer somewhere else, you should be able to pass at a Texas Card House without too much trouble. I will say dealing at Texas Card House for a Texas Hold'em dealer is not going to be that easy because there's probably 2 to 4 tables per shift that you deal mixed games. For me, it's great. I love it because it keeps me fresh. It's not the same thing every single table, but not everybody loves it, especially if they're not fully experienced. Excuse me. Let's see. Uh, Captain says, "Glad you didn't say birthday suit." Right. That would have been a funny answer for my favorite suit. There are some people who I love their birthday suits for other people. Not everyone, but there's some. Let's see. Greg says, "What's your favorite starting hand?" Me, I like queens, kings, and aces. So it's an interesting question. In any uh, smaller big blind game like, or here's what I should say. In tables where there are fewer big blinds, I love the big pairs, aces and kings especially, ace king suited and stuff like that. But the deeper the game is, if you're talking about playing like a $7,000 stack at a 2-5 game at Texas Card House is common. All right, 5,000 is very common. So if you're talking about that, where you're like 1,000 big blinds deep, um, I do definitely enjoy uh, suited connectors or one gap suited cards because then it turns into a much different game of poker. I watched somebody absolutely jam up somebody else at the table the other day. There was a king 10 7 flop and they had jack 9, right? And jack 9 is a very disguised double gutter with a king 10 7 board. Something like that is pretty cool. I do like, especially because of the live poker coaching project, I very much enjoy um, dealing these very deep 2-5 games because in the live poker coaching YouTube project, live poker coaching one word if you want to start watching that stuff, Mike teaches deep stack poker. He's that's his thing. He doesn't like short stacked 2-5 no limit. He doesn't like $300 buy-ins. He doesn't even like $500 buy-ins. He likes deep stacks, and that is one of the things this project is building up to. By the time we get to 500 in this series, because every hand is consecutive. By the time we get to hand 500, these stacks are going to be very deep, and that's awesome. Let's see. Patrick says, if you like sauce, you should try Thai curry. I really like Zap Kitchen here in Dallas. So I just the thing I had last night, it was decent. It wasn't like the best thing ever. But this is a Trader Joe's thing that I bought last night, and I ate this. Let me see right here. Thai green curry summer sauce. I had this with brown rice and some salad and some vegetables and stuff, and it was great. I'm not saying go and buy that right away. It was like pretty good, but it's a simmer sauce. I didn't do it properly, I don't think, but we're on the same page is what I'm trying to say. Zap Kitchen is pretty cool to hear about. I did not know about that place. I'll check it out. Let me see. SI says, have any pros stopped by? And Patrick says, I saw TJ Cloutier during the 500K guarantee. Patrick says, what a coincidence for the food. I didn't know TJ Cloutier was in the room. That's cool. I had no idea he was there. But that's awesome. Let's see. Greg says, I once had 9-7 of hearts in early position. The flop came up 8 of hearts, 6 of hearts, 5 of hearts. I bet 50 for value. Everybody else folded. Did I make the right move? Probably not. When you flop a hand that is absolutely unbeatable. So I literally dealt a hand like this the other day where a player raised pre-flop with, I want to say like a 10-8 of spades, and they flopped the top end of the straight flush. And they had actually 3-bet. So they gave themselves the absolute perfect scenario. And here's the thing, okay? Look, I'm not an amazing poker player, but I can tell you what makes sense to me and what the players were talking about at the table after this guy. He had to show when everyone folded. So it went raised to 30. He 3-bet to 105 from the button. And he got 2 callers. And he flopped the straight flush just like you. So we'll say it was even your hand. Okay? If you check that flop, so it checked to him, just like it checked to you. If he were to check that flop, what does that say? Okay? If an ace flops and you just 3-bet and you check your set of aces, and then you show aggression later in the hand, it says you probably have a set of aces or a very strong hand. But on this type of a board, if you check there, depending on what comes next, it's going to be very hard for someone to just know with certainty that you have a very strong hand. So by checking there, yeah, you can make the argument you want to build up the pot, but you're really only trying to get value from maybe the ace of hearts in your example or the ace of spades in the other example. Give people a chance to catch something on the next street, in my opinion. Especially if they can turn a set or something like that, because then you might be able to stack them. If they already have a flush, that's the one scenario that where maybe you're missing out on some value. But I do think checking on that flop is really strong. And then if you bet the turn, now it looks a lot more suspicious. It looks like maybe you have an overpair um, with the right suit or something like that. But yeah, I don't think betting was the right move. I mean, yes, you're gonna get value from all hands that call, but you're missing out on future value, and you're missing out on um, also a check raise is probably the best thing, especially if you called the raise instead of being the initial raiser. Patrick says, yeah, during the tourney break, we let him cut the huge bathroom line since he's such a legend. Also, senior citizen, so gotta respect your elders. Um, that makes sense. And man, that's fascinating. I'm happy to hear that he was there. I've read one of his books on Omaha. It would have been cool to say hey. Um, I also don't know what he's up to nowadays. I didn't even know he was really playing that much nowadays. TJ Cloutier. There have been some other pros that have come to the room for sure over time, um, but let me see. I haven't. I'm not. I mean, I know John Jawanda was there at one point. I'm not. Or no, no. Johnny Chan was there. I should say. John Jawanda. Someone said that they thought he was there. Johnny Chan was there for a few days. This was before I got there, though. I haven't seen too many people myself, but apparently I'm not paying attention right. Also, for what it's worth, anytime you start working in a room, even me, someone who's experienced, like there's a lot to get used to. You got to get used to the way that they do things, and you got to retrain your mind for all of it. And it can be a lot. The littlest things can throw you off. For example, in Texas Card House, the dealers tap in behind the right side of the table, where the majority of the industry comes in on the left. Why do they do that? Because the way that their tables are designed, the tip box is on the left. So it wouldn't make sense to take your tip box from the left and then exit to the right. So they do what makes more sense for them, which is exit on the same side of the tip box. I totally get it. I still had to get used to it, right? There's 100 different details like that when you first start a room. So I've sort of been locked in for the most part, but now I feel a lot more smooth and comfortable in there. Greg says, thinking about it now, I definitely should have checked the flop and seen what developed from there. Yeah. Um, uh, Eddie also says, with a straight flush, you might consider checking the flop, betting on the turn if an overcard comes with a value bet, and if it's a good over on the river, do the same. You want to let them build a hand on 4-5. Fourth Street or Fifth Street, yeah, unless they 3/4 bet pre-flop. Greg, I sort of follow what you're saying. But yeah, I think Greg gets it. I mean, having played against you, Greg, I do believe in you as a player. Also, it's really funny when we play hands against each other. Like, trying to win one hand, not for money, is so different than trying to play a session of poker too, which I definitely enjoy. All right, so what else? What else do we want to cover here? I do want to say a big thank you to everybody that says hi to me, that knows me from these live streams. I've been sort of blown away by the amount of people that play in Texas Card House that have watched my YouTube channel. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate. Like, I sat down. This was actually embarrassing, but I sat down. This is a real thing that happened. I sat down at a Pot Limit Omaha table. And as soon as I sat down, a player at the table who was really, really nice about it, who I busted 3 or 4 times, which was brutal because obviously I'm not trying to bust people that are watching my channel, but I have no control over it. But anyway, I sit down at the table and he's like, "Oh, coach is here. We're all gonna learn something," and I felt really like supported in that. Someone watches my channel and they're excited to have me deal. The very first hand, this player is all in a Pot Limit Omaha double board bomb pot, and I misread his hand and I misread his opponent's hand, and I thought it was a split pot when in fact the other player scooped the whole thing. So I went to give him half the pot. This was a terrible mistake, and it's not something that I make very often, but I was just like not thinking clearly. There was a queen, jack, 4 on the board. on the bottom board, which gets half the pot, in pot limit Omaha, and he had like a 10-9 something something, and the other player had just a pair of threes and something something else, and I thought that the queens and jacks played thinking using my hold'em brain, because like we deal a lot of bomb pots and most of them are hold'em, and it didn't occur to me that he did not win that bottom board, because if you know Omaha, you know you cannot have two pair on the board in Omaha, because that's four cards from the board. You have to have exactly three from the board and two from the player's hand. So queens and trays were actually the winning hand on the bottom board, and not queens and jacks with a 10 like I thought. So I made that mistake immediately after he said we're going to get a lesson. But stuff like that happens as a dealer. I try to talk about the mistakes that I make on this live stream because it is a part of the game. I don't want to make mistakes. Nobody does, but they happen. Um, I didn't like push the pot. I sort of had it in front of him and then I took it back. Um, there was at a different table yesterday. There's actually something really interesting that happened that caused players to call the floor over and chat them up and ask them questions about stuff. So I'll tell you guys what happened in 1 second. Just because it's a really interesting dynamic and it's something as a dealer that you should know. Let's see. SI says, but yeah, I'll get to this story in a second. I'm going to actually put this comment here. Tell story about 10 high. That's a note for myself. Okay, so SI says, I live in South Jersey and always wonder why I stick around so long and put up with the brutal Northeast winters. I was thinking of moving to Miami area. Any good places to play down there? Whenever I visit Miami, never thought of poker, but to enjoy warm weather more. LOL. So is just wondering, since I'd probably be there permanently. So I spent 11 years in South Florida, in and around Miami, and I absolutely love Miami with my whole self. And it's very possible that I will one day go back there. They have multiple places to play poker. The Hard Rock in Hollywood is probably the best place to play. The Coconut Creek Casino, which is also seminal in Coconut Creek, which is near Boca, it's probably only 25 minutes away from the Hard Rock, is a great place to play. If you speak Spanish, there's some rooms that are decent as well. There's probably about 8 or 9 good spots to play poker in South Florida. The Seminole ones are probably the best. So there's plenty of poker to play out there. They just finished a tournament series that was insanely successful, and that's sort of how they roll. And the guitar-shaped hotel at the Hard Rock in Hollywood is amazing. I have a lot of positive things to say about them in general. So there's plenty of places to play down there, and yeah, like I tease people that, because I'm from Boston, I'm from the Boston area, and I tease people that I know up there all the time, and I tell them, you are choosing to live in the cold. You're choosing it every day, and they're like, but. I'm like, no, you're choosing to live up there. You don't need to live like that. I know it's a lot to move and leave family and friends, so I do get that side of it. But if you're like me and you just want to be happy and you hate the cold, then I do recommend it. And there's plenty of poker to be played in South Florida. It's about as good as anywhere. Let's see. Greg says, once I get my poker vlog going, will you watch? Yes, I will. I'd be curious to see it, and I'll also give you pointers on how to improve it if I see any things that I think could be better. That's me in a nutshell. Captain, are you there on Sundays and Mondays? Yes, I am. I go to Texas Card House. Let me see. I'll tell you my upcoming schedule of working for this coming week. Why not? Let me look at my schedule for this upcoming week. I love when people say hi to me. Like, I've gotten so much love out there. It's really, really appreciated. Oh, when I try to use my phone for anything, it jams up the live stream. That makes sense, actually. I only have my shifts for the rest of this week so far. So, let me see. Wednesday, I am 3 p.m. Saturday, I'm 5:30 p.m. Sunday, I'm 4:30 p.m. So, Wednesday, I'm 3 p.m. Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Sunday, 4:30 p.m. And those are my start times. So, you guys are all welcome to come and say hi, etc. All right, the story about 10 high. So, here's what happened. I was dealing 2-5 no limit Texas Hold'em, and uh, there was a pot that probably had about $500 in it, and a player bet 200 and something on the river, and another player thought about it and then called. And the player that had bet the 200 very confidently showed their hand, and they showed that they had 10 high. And so I'm looking at their hand, and I frame the board appropriately, showing that it's a 10 high, but I hadn't yet gotten to the point where I said anything. Just as I was about to say something, and this is a delicate situation because as a dealer, you have to communicate clearly what the hand is, but when I say 10 high, that's not actually what the hand is, right? The player had a 10-8 in their hand, there was a 5-6-7 on the board, there was a queen on the board, and there was an ace on the board, all right? So they had missed a couple of draws, and they had basically showed their hand because they had been called, and there's always that tiny chance that the other person's going to read it wrong and muck. So the other player hadn't done anything yet. I frame the board when this player tables, okay, and I don't want to influence whether or not this player sees what the hand is. The thing I'm supposed to say at this point is not 10 high. I'm supposed to say ace queen with a 10 or something like that, right? Like an ace queen 10 high or something like that. I hadn't said anything. The other player that they're against thought that they saw a straight, even though I had pushed up the ace, the queen, and the 8 on the board. No, the 7 on the board. Ace queen 7 is what I pushed up. And the other player mucks their hand, and then as they muck their hand, I'm just about to go and get that hand, and another player at the table says, "You like 10 high." So everybody at the table, when this player mucks, everybody at the table is confused. They're all giving that puzzled face, like, "Dude, what do you like? Could you possibly have had worse than that? What hand could you?" They were trying to figure out what they had that was worse, like maybe a 9 something, but then why would they be calling at the end with a 9 high? They have to have a better hand. So a player at the table, like as soon as this player throws his hand out, says 10 high, something like that, at which point the player snatches their cards back and tables that they had an ace in their hand for a pair of aces is what they called. And I, as the dealer, had the responsibility. I framed the hand, but I did have the responsibility of saying what the hand is. So the question is, how exactly do you go about doing that as a dealer? These situations can be really delicate. Here's the deal in this situation, okay? When a player tables their hand, as a dealer, you frame it first, and then you do want to announce what it is. I'm supposed to read what that hand is, and I was trying to decide exactly how I wanted to word that when the player mucked. Once the player mucked, another player spoke up. He ended up feeling really bad about it after, and I sort of calmed him down by saying, "Look, if you hadn't said what that hand was, I have the responsibility of reading what that hand is." Now, here's the tricky part, though. Once a player releases their hand, I have these two responsibilities: to read what is tabled and also to take the discarded hand. That player did have the responsibility to read it on their own. If he hadn't immediately gotten back and gotten his hand, then his hand would have been dead. So here's my problem, though. As the dealer, I did something that was sort of in this gray area. It's not right of me to frame the board and not read what the hand is, right? If I frame the board, I'm implying that there's a hand there that's obvious. If I don't read what the hand is, it's not right for me to snatch those cards immediately. It would be right for me to say ace, queen, 10 high, then go to reach for their cards, and if they get them, they get them, all right? And that's sort of what I was going toward when the other player said 10 high. And it's an interesting thing as a dealer because as the dealer, if I only frame the board and don't say anything, I am actually creating a confusing circumstance for the player that's trying to read the board, where if I hadn't done anything and they mucked their cards, okay, but because I framed that board, it's not really ethical for me to just snatch these mucked cards. just in case anybody's following what I'm saying. Once I frame the board, I should actually say the hand in a case like this, and I should be saying it anyway once a player tables their hand. Um, so I figured I'd just sort of share that story because the players then ask, like, when a player tables their hand at showdown, is the dealer supposed to say what it is? And the supervisor correctly said, yes, they are supposed to read the hand. Framing the board is not just reading the hand. Framing the board only, which is sort of the thing that I did in the moment, does create confusion, and it should be avoided. Reading the hand is 10 high, though. That would also be wrong because technically it's not a 10 high, right? So when the other player at the table said 10 high, that's sort of confusing things as well. They should have been an ace queen 10 high is how it should have been read. Reading down to the point where one of the cards that were tabled is included in the thing that I'm reading. So I just sort of wanted to share that so that you dealers that are learning to deal this game at home, and anyone that's experienced that still wants to know this, you understand, when a player does table their hand, you do want to read it to the extent that it goes from confusing to not confusing for any players that are at the table playing. If you say ace queen 10 high and they still muck, that's on them. All right. Now, if they muck before you get a chance to even do anything, such as frame the board or table it or anything like that, that's on them too. But I thought that was an interesting circumstance. There is a school of thought that some people say you're not supposed to read any hands or frame any hands until all hands are tabled. I don't personally buy into that line of thinking. I think that that's just a misinterpretation of the WSOP rules. Every once in a while I stand corrected on things, but I don't think that makes sense to wait for every single player to table their hand before reading anything on the board, though. But yeah, I just wanted to share that experience. It was an interesting thing that came up because the players were like really trying to figure it out. And then one player asked, well, let's say there's a straight on the board. Nobody tables their hand. Does the dealer say that? Well, the answer is no. And I wouldn't do that. And you wouldn't do that. But once a player tables their hand, if there's an 8 high straight on the board and they table pocket kings, then as a dealer you say straight. That's all you need to say. Let's see. Greg says, I prefer the cold myself. Yeah, I think we talked about this once, actually. And then Eddie says, Mark, do you recommend any poker books? Greg says, I've read Play Poker Like the Pros by Phil Hellmuth. And poker books that I recommend, let's see. I've read probably like 15 of them. What do I recommend nowadays? Here's what I'll say. If you want to spend money learning to play poker better, I truly recommend just getting a membership to one of these coaching services. I think that's your best bet. I know a handful of poker pros that have started out that way, and I don't know which ones they would go with, but I would imagine that all of them nowadays are pretty good. I know that Doug Polk offers one. I don't know any graduates of his stuff, but I think it's Upswing. There's Crush Live Poker. Eventually there will be a live poker coaching thing for you as well. But I think poker books are sort of a thing of the past in terms of learning. Because here's the problem. When you take one of these courses nowadays, you're going to learn how to range opponents, and you're going to see a lot of examples. A poker book is just words and words on text and in a piece of paper. It's really hard to capture a true proper line of thinking in a poker book. And like I said, I read a bunch of them. Now, from an entertainment standpoint, I absolutely love the Gus Hansen book where he played that tournament and he had his voice recorder and he recorded every single relevant hand from the tournament that he ended up winning the 10K guarantee, or no, the 10K buy-in rather. Eddie says, did you know Doug Polk is a pretty decent competitive Counter-Strike player? I didn't. That's pretty funny. I do know that he absolutely destroyed Daniel Negreanu in the heads-up challenge that he did with 25,000 hands. I think he took him for like 1.2 million, which beating Negreanu at anything poker is freaking amazing. Yeah, but everyone was favoring Doug Polk because that's what he did. But a mind like that doesn't surprise me. Speaking of Negreanu, he has. I once watched him turn legend in Hearthstone back before they had this new setup, which is really hard to do too. These poker pros are freaking smart. You know, it is what it is. Um, let's see. But yeah, I think there's a handful of these courses online, and you don't have to break your bank in order to join this stuff. I would really just sort of dive in when you feel like you have a month or two that you can just really go for it and start learning this stuff. I've heard good things from some of these things. I don't remember which ones, but I think that they're all pretty decent, is my guess. And read some reviews on them, and you should be fine. To me, that's way better than a poker book. It's like you can get a coach and spend a ton of money, or you can take these courses and learn how to range people and all this stuff. And it's just hard to do that in books. Authentic CBD says, I second online training sites. Having said that, Andrew Broco's books and Jonathan Little are awesome. How's it going, Authentic CBD? I'm glad that you're watching. Appreciate that. So those are two. Let me see. Those are two things that I'm less familiar with. There is a book that I really liked that was about poker, and it had the word tiltless in it. Tiltless. I read it years ago, and I, as a poker player, definitely struggle with tilt. Right, like I have a sound mind, and then I get off of that. And this book really was pointed at learning to avoid tilt, and therefore making money by saving money, if that makes sense. I forget the name of it, but if you look up poker book with the word tiltless in it, I loved that book too. Let's see. Captain Underpairs says, I'm a premium member. Oh, great. Let's see. A premium member of which one? I'll try one of the courses. Cool. Eddie, I'm glad. I'm happy for you. Michael says, can you become a good player just from watching others play on YouTube? Well, I'm in the process of sort of building that with the live poker coaching brand. Um, it's live poker coaching. It's one word on YouTube. It's not complete yet, but there's a lot there. I don't know is really the right answer. The problem is if you don't understand why poker players are doing the things that they're doing on the truly right level, you're going to learn the wrong things. You know, I in creating live poker coaching, I've worked now for a couple of years with poker pro Michael Lockey. He has a very, very good poker resume. I have watched him 12 table, multi-table tournaments online, and I understand how he does it. I never understood how somebody can multi-table. Like I've multi-tabled 6 games before online, and I can keep up with it. Can't do any more than that without absolutely losing my mind. I watched him do 12. I understand how he does it. He is someone who focuses on decisions. And once a decision is made, he doesn't care about the story that happens afterwards. So if he makes a decision in a hand, and the hand's over, he's not going to look at what happened unless it's somehow going to teach him about a player in a way that he needs to be taught, or whatever. But if he doesn't learn anything about future decisions, he doesn't even care what happens. So he's able to keep up with 12 screens because of that. My point in talking about this, though, is I learned truly how I've been playing poker since 2002, and I used to think of myself as a good poker player. Like I can beat a 2-5 no limit game in most casinos, but I'm not a good player because I've spent so much time learning either on my own or from people around me, and I'm not learning the right things. In order to be a truly, truly good poker player, you have to, in my opinion, you have to find really good mentors. And when you find those mentors, then you learn and practice the right things. Okay, I am just now for the first time learning to take advantage of my time in the box as a dealer and learning to range players at the table like Poker Pro Mike Lockey talks about. I never done that before. I've been around poker for so long, but I've never taught myself how to properly range players. What is this person trying to accomplish with this bet? What are they thinking about? Does it feel like value? Does it feel like what are they trying to do with this? And there's so much insight that goes into something like that. ranging players, etc. So the thing I would really say is, in order to be an amazing poker player, actually, I interviewed Tommy recently, a poker pro that plays at TCH, and it was about the meditation and like mindset of playing poker and all that stuff. And he said he spent tens of thousands of dollars on a mentor, and it was worth it because he was able to be better and better at poker. It's just if you don't know what information to be learning, it's so hard. People try to learn cheap. It's not smart, in my opinion. This is why I recommended the coaching. They can be your coaches. It really makes a difference. You learn the game the right way, and then you can build on the right foundation. I spent, I want to say, 18 years of my life playing poker and not building on the right foundation, and my game suffered as a result of it. And now I'm at a point where I have to decide, do I want to take it seriously at some point and learn it the right way? And I don't know. I'm still going to play sometimes because it's fun. There's still certain things about the game. Like I love the Mike Caro book on Poker Tells as well. The only problem I have with the Mike Caro book on Poker Tells is I learned a lot of them and they are very valuable. But honestly, there's better and easier ways to identify whether or not you're good in a hand than focusing on a live read. Betting amounts, betting patterns, and a lot of the stuff I've learned that Mike Lockey does accomplishes the same thing but with less energy being spent on than trying to figure out live reads. So there's a lot to it is my point, but hopefully that was a helpful answer for you. SI says, if you were to open a poker room, what would you call it? I would call it True Poker Dealer Poker Room. That's just me. I actually said this to somebody earlier today. I love the idea of having there be a True Poker Dealer branded poker room. People would love to work there. I've had two people sort of reach out to me about that over the last year, and neither of them were the right fit, but it was pretty cool to be reached out to about it, and I've been thinking about it myself sort of as a result of that. It's a lot to build a poker room from scratch. It truly is, and there's a ton of upside to it, and yeah, I have a friend in that I used to work with in one of the first casinos that I started out with that one day I may partner up with and open a room with them. Not in Texas though. Not because I don't like Texas. It's just they would never want to come to Texas. They have the place that they live and the place where they would want to open. Let's see. Does TCH allow anyone to vlog, not a live vlog, but recorded? That way there can't be any cheating attempted? I don't know. Let me see. I am going to ask that question.